Perfectionism is not part of your disposition. It's not a cute quirk. It's not even high standards. It's a trauma-informed strategy your brain created to avoid judgment, to prevent rejection, to stay safe in systems that punish mistakes and label them as failure. Have you ever looked at your to-do list and thought, if I could just get this right, maybe then I could exhale? Have you ever worked twice as hard to avoid even the littlest chance of disappointing somebody? Have you ever rewritten a message so many times that you actually forgot what you wanted to say? This is not ambition. This is not excellence. This is not your sign talking. Virgo, I'm an Aries. This is perfectionism. And here's what most people miss. Perfectionism is not part of your disposition. It's not a cute quirk. It's not even high standards. It's a trauma-informed strategy your brain created to avoid judgment, to prevent rejection, to stay safe in systems that punish mistakes and label them as failure. This episode is not a call out, though if you feel personally attacked, I totally relate. Hopefully you feel attacked in a good way. This is a lifeline because perfectionism doesn't mean you're broken. It means you've been operating in a world that made you believe you had to be flawless to belong. And it's time to break that cycle. So if any of this sounds like you, then this is your episode. Let's go.
I'm Dr. Charlie Hornis, highly anxious people pleaser turned master certified professional life coach. Learning to manage my brain was so life-changing for me that I got certified so that I could teach these incredible evidence-based practices to you. Are you ready for massive change? Let's go.
If you're the one who always holds it together, if your schedule is packed, your inbox is full, and your standards are sky high, but deep down you're still exhausted from chasing the moving target of enough. You're not lazy, you're not defective, and you're definitely not alone. There are so many of us that can relate to this. You see, you were taught that if you looked the part, followed the rules, and stayed in control, you'd feel safe eventually. But that safety never came because the game was never built for you to win. This episode is for all the women who've done everything right and still feel behind. The ones who are exhausted from overfunctioning, overgiving, bending over backwards, accommodating, and still wondering when it will ever be enough. We've got to change the pattern. Not with pressure, not with a motivational pep talk. As you know, that is not my jam, but with real tools to interrupt the perfectionism cycle and to rebuild your confidence from the inside out. But before we dive in, let's do a quick check-in. Here's the thing about perfectionism. It doesn't just live in your thoughts. It lives in your body, in your nervous system, your limbic system. It lives in your physiology. It lives in your muscle memory, in the freeze response that kicks in when you're about to disappoint somebody. That's why therapy is a game changer. And that's why I'm excited to share that this spring we're partnering with BetterHelp and they're sponsoring some of our episodes. BetterHelp will connect you with a clinical licensed therapist online, affordable, and built around your schedule. Because when your body's stuck in performance mode, insight alone will not fix it. You need support, consistent support, real support. So if you're ready to get started, run on over to my affiliate link at betterhelp.com/art of and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of ARTOF. All right, let's get back into it. Let's start by defining what perfectionism actually is. And I really get into it with my trusty dictionary in a previous episode. But today we're going to talk about how we're going to stop calling perfectionism a flaw. It's not. Perfectionism is not you being difficult or dramatic or high maintenance. It's your brain trying to prevent danger using control. Perfectionism is a strategy your nervous system adopted when you were told at some point in your life, don't make mistakes, don't disappoint, don't be difficult. And at some point, those rules weren't just spoken out loud. They were reinforced somehow, somewhere in your life. They were reinforced by silence, rejection, by correction, reprimand, by making you feel guilty, by responding to you in passive aggressive ways, not being clear, by praising you for being so grown up when you were really just suppressing your needs and your emotions. And over time, you became the woman who triple checks everything before hitting send. I know I do. And there's still mistakes. And then I'm super pissed off about it. Seriously. I check everything 8,000 times. There's still mistakes. I don't even know why I try. I just need to move on, right? You become the woman who spends hours fixing something no one asked you to fix. You say yes when you're at your capacity because you don't want to be the letdown. But this is not your identity. It's protection. So where does perfectionism come from? Let's map the origin. Because you were not born afraid to be seen as messy. You were not born afraid to be seen without your makeup on. You were not born with some of these little quirks. For example, I love to organize my closet by color. So my closet is either organized by color or in a total disastrous pile on the floor, all mixed up. That's it. Those are my two clothing decisions in my bedroom. And if you really want to mess with me, you take a color and you put it in the wrong color section. And I cannot handle it. We learned these things. They manifest differently in everybody. But the perfectionism itself, the origin, comes from classrooms where mistakes meant shame, from families where you got praised for being the easiest one, from work environments where men got to wing it, but you were told to be twice as prepared. So perfectionism became your armor and you wear it well. But here's the problem. The better you got at wearing it, the harder it became to take off because the praise, the performance, they reinforce the pattern. Look how capable she is. She never drops the ball. She's just so organized. How does she do it all? Meanwhile, your body is cracking under the pressure of being the woman who never drops the ball. This is not control. This is fear dressed up as excellence. So what is perfectionism costing you? It's stealing your peace. It's stealing your presence. It's stealing your power. It's stealing your time that you're wasting fixing stuff that no one asked you to fix. Asking feels like weakness, and good enough feels like failure. Believe me, I know. When it comes to delegating, I hate it. I hate it. Nobody does stuff as well as I think I do, and I probably do it pretty crappy, but still, that's what I think. And then when I hand something off to somebody and they screw it up, I'm like, I should have known. I should be doing all of these things myself. Blah, 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 blah. And then I'm taking on too many responsibilities because I can't just let it go and let somebody be good at what they're good at and let it be what it is. It feels like a failure. But what if you could trade in your perfectionism for internal authority? What if you could let your standards serve you without sacrificing yourself to meet them? Well, let's learn how. Here's one of my favorite parts of every episode, working with thought work. So let's break this down with our lovely tool, the model. And again, if you don't have this information, there is a downloadable interactive workbook on my website. Just go to charliehornisscoaching.com/model and grab your workbook there. It's free. So let's look at breaking perfectionism down using our trusty tool, the model. The self-coaching framework that I use in just about every episode. So we're going to look at our lines, CTFAR, C, circumstance, T, thought, F, feeling, A, action, R, result. And they create one another. So you start with the circumstance that's neutral. It creates a thought that we have about the circumstance. Then the thought creates the feeling creates the action creates the result. So let's look at the circumstance. You got asked to lead at a meeting. And so the thought you have is, if I mess this up, they're never going to ask me to do this again. So what feeling would that thought create? Dread, maybe. That's what it would create in me. So then what action do we take? And again, I'm just using very simple examples. You can just, fill in the blanks for yourself. The action that we take, because we're feeling dread over the thought, they're never going to ask me to do this again if I screw it up, and we put all this pressure on ourselves. So we over prepare, we over apologize, we apologize before we even walk in the room, and we edit ourselves. And what's the result we get from that action? We start to show up so much smaller, taking up so much less space than we should. And it confirms our brain's prediction that we just weren't ready. Do you see how that works? We have the thought, it creates the feeling creates the action, and the action creates the result. Often when our thoughts are not managed, when we're not managing our brains, we create self-fulfilling prophecies. It's not about the circumstance that you got asked to lead a meeting. It's the thought that you create in your brain driving the behavior. So now we have to rewire that. And that means creating brand new neural pathways in our brains. So let's try a new thought. It's safe to show up before I feel ready. It is. Why wouldn't it be? They can't eat you. You're safe. Even if Bob in accounting is an a-hole, It's safe to show up before you feel ready. What would that create in your body when we talk about feelings? Maybe you feel more grounded. So what action does feeling grounded cause you to take? You prep enough, you speak clearly, you show up and you lead. You do the thing. You just do it. Think too much about it, freak yourself out. And what's your result? You build proof that your value isn't in the polish. It's in your presence. It's in the work. It's in your experience, your education. The fact that you've been hired. That's the work. We're not just thinking better thoughts. We're changing the model that's been running your life behind the scenes forever. So let's talk about the rewire. This is confidence over perfection. Now, we've talked about confidence a lot. Confidence is not a blessing or a gift that you either have or you don't. It's a skill that you practice. Try this in real time sometime today. Step 1, notice the tension, the clench, the tightness when something isn't quite right. When you're being asked to hand something off that you could do better. When you feel like if it's not perfect, you're going to get criticized. This is your perfection script kicking in. Step 2, name the old rule. If I don't do this flawlessly, I'll get criticized. Does this sound familiar? If not, fill in the blank. But I really relate to that one because when I was in my field, it was absolutely a fact that if I didn't do something flawlessly, I got criticized. If I made a mistake, there was a line out the door ready to tell me all the things that were wrong with me. And initially, I thought I was making mistakes. I thought, oh, okay, well, let me just do better. No big deal. It never stopped. I wasn't allowed to make one misstep or I was criticized. And that became a running tape in my brain that I cannot make a single mistake. And it was in multiple different positions, multiple. It just had to do with my field. Does any of this sound familiar? Step 3, replace the thought with a power reframe. Try something like, it doesn't have to be perfect to be powerful. If somebody doesn't like that we make a flaw, that's pretty messed up. If people cannot have the compassion and the kindness and the forgiveness in their hearts to allow people to make mistakes and learn from them, that's really messed up. Step 4, act before you feel ready. One of my favorite steps. We can use that with almost everything. Why? Because it builds evidence and your brain loves it. Your brain doesn't like when you say it to it, it gets mad, it resists, it's going to throw a tantrum. But then when you do something before you're ready and you don't die, your brain all of a sudden codes it as proof that you can do stuff. That's how your brain updates its safety map, because your nervous system doesn't care what you believe. It responds to what you do. And once you do it and you don't die, it codes it as evidence that it's safe. So often we don't even see that we're being trained, that we're being told how to behave, that we're being told the expectations that we're supposed to meet in order to receive another person's approval. And approval is subjective. And people can change that. They can move the goalpost on you. They can take away approval. They can use it as a psyops weaponized tactic to control you. And I'm not saying this is some like conspiracy theory. It's human nature in that animal kingdom for there to be an alpha and for somebody to sort of be the top of the food chain and have control. And that is sort of a bitter fight. So there's some ugliness involved in the natural order of things. And we see human beings trying to assert their power and authority over one another all the time. All the time. You know, one thing that was interesting when I worked in the church is that the majority of the people that held me to these standards and criticized and really drove me out, basically, because I didn't have these tools at the time to be successful and not give a shit, they were the ones in leadership. So many of them craved this level of power. And there was something about church and, you know, in my denomination, all of our leaders had to be ordained, and we were ordained in different functions. You know, as an ordained minister, I'm the minister of word and sacrament, but our elders were ordained as ruling elders, and they kind of like were the city council of the church. They made the laws. They made sure that the laws were kept. They ran the church. They did all of the budgeting and accounting and personnel. And, you know, I was supposed to be in charge of choosing scripture and preaching on it, because I was educated in that, and presiding over the sacraments because, again, I was educated in that. But that was it. And there was so much that they criticized me for. And I'll never understand why I started to see this pattern, that the people that were my biggest critics and the most difficult were the ones that were in power. I guess that's just human nature, that we crave it. We, you know, want to be on top of the food chain, and we want people to submit. We want to be dominant. And then there's the whole thing about, you know, I was a woman, and there was a whole lot of people that did not like a woman having authority over them, especially when you're holding an office of something like ordination and ministry. That caused a whole lot of problems, which put a target on my head, which made it very easy for people to just want to criticize. And I thought the solution was just to do better. I had been convinced, I'd been groomed, if you will, to believe that I was getting it all wrong. And that gave them the ability to constantly criticize and to hold this power over me as the person holding the office of minister. Like, can you imagine the power trip of feeling like you're holding power over the minister? Like, this stuff is so wild. It's just wild. And it took me a really long time to understand that it wasn't me. Even if it was me, it wasn't me, right? Even if I did make mistakes, like if we're talking about a church culture, where's the welcome and the hospitality and the forgiveness? But because my body would react in such a way in this, you know, survival mechanism that I didn't even know was happening. I didn't know what amygdala hijacking was. I didn't know what my survival mechanism was taking over. I thought I was like flawed. I couldn't understand why I couldn't handle criticism. I couldn't think in the moment, why my brain would go foggy and my heart rate would start beating so fast, and I would just go blank, and I never had the right comeback. And then, overnight I'd be like, oh, dang it, 2 a.m. And I'd be like, oh, I should have said this. I should have said that, blah, blah, blah. The whole ruminating, shoulda, coulda, woulda bullshit. The truth was, this was a opportunity for somebody to assert power over another, to dominate, to act out the issues that they had. And, one of the major parts of my dissertation was using some pastoral theology that talks about how so many people are masking identity-based conflict with task-oriented conflict. And again, I've delved into this a lot more in a previous episode I can put in the show notes for you. It's not straightforward anymore. There's a level of passive aggressiveness because people cannot come out and say what it is that they believe. For example, a woman should not hold an office of minister and hold that authority over me. I learned later there were so many people that believed that. They were taught that. That was the narrative. And I'm bringing it back full circle here. That was the narrative that was running on tape in their brains that they had been taught, maybe when they were little in Sunday school, that, women were not capable of being ordained ministers. The narratives, the stories that were ingrained in their brains, and they believed them to be true. So true, they were willing to attack and criticize their pastor. The problem women are having is that it's their person that's the problem. And you cannot differentiate between the problem and the person when who's attacking you sees you and your person as the problem. And this is what's the most important thing about understanding perfectionism, is that you're never going to make anybody happy. You're never going to get it perfectly right. And if you do get it perfectly right, it's not going to change how people react to you. It's not going to change the fact that somebody wants to reprimand you. It's not going to change the fact that you're never going to please somebody. It's not going to change any of that. So you might as well throw it out the window and start living your life with joy and success. Because chasing affirmation from other people is 1000% the direct roadmap to a miserable life. So this is about doing, not thinking. This is about creating a thought that creates a feeling that creates an action, doing, so that you get an entirely different result. And most of the time, the doing is an internal job. It's within us. It's not about the approval. It's not about getting the pat on the head. It's not about any of that. It doesn't come from other people, because other people, approval, all of that stuff is fleeting. It's subjective, and the goalpost can change at any moment the minute somebody has an agenda, even if they don't know it. And most people don't. Most people don't, but they still act ugly. And so do we. So in order to begin to nip things like perfectionism in the bud, we have to start inside. We have to start understanding it's an entirely inside job. And remember, this spring, several of our episodes are being sponsored by BetterHelp, because sometimes even when your brain knows the thought isn't true, your body still panics like it is. I have been there. So that's why therapy is a game changer. BetterHelp matches you with a licensed therapist on your schedule without the therapy speak. Go to betterhelp.com/art of. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/art of, ARTOF, and you'll get that 10% off when you use my affiliate link. Because your well-being is not a luxury. It's a requirement for the life that you're building. Here's my final thought. Let's end with one last model to carry you through the week. Here's your circumstance. You hit publish on something imperfect. Your old thought, they'll think I'm sloppy. Your new thought, I'd rather be real than perfectly polished. Real people make mistakes. The feeling, empowered. So what is the action you take? You post it. You let it be seen. And the result, you practice internal credibility instead of chasing external applause. And you understand that you're a human who's going to make mistakes. And anybody who cannot handle that needs to first take a good look in the mirror, because the goal isn't to be perfect. It's to be whole. And perfection, that was never the assignment. All right, friend, if this episode called you out in the best way, I hope you will share it. Text it to the most brilliant woman you know who is exhausted from trying to get it right all the time. And remember to subscribe for new episodes every week. So until next time, lead like it's already done. I'll see you next week.